Good morning everyone, hope you're all well wherever you are in the world. This is another mushroom growing video. You may have seen my first mushroom growing video where I'm collecting spores from white cap mushrooms. Well, at the same time I'm also trying this method. This is a method for growing oyster mushrooms, and it's basically you put a slice of the mycelium from the centre of an oyster mushroom into a jar full of grain and coffee grounds, and the idea is to spawn the mushroom in the grain and fill the jar with mycelium. As you can see, well, I hope you can see that properly. Let me just try and... That's a little bit better. As you can see, this thin slice of mushroom has already begun to... the mycelium is beginning to spread. It's getting fluffier and fluffier. There's a piece there, there's another piece in there, and there's a couple more pieces within the grain. And what will happen is the mycelium will spread all throughout this jar of grain, and then once that's happened, you then use the grain to inoculate your substrate, the stuff that you're actually growing the mushrooms on, which I'll be using some straw in a plastic bag, and then you put it into a grow box, and hopefully you get mushrooms. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how you get to this stage from the beginning. The first step I have, last night I put 1 cup of rye seed. I'm using rye seed in the jar. 1 cup of rye seed, a couple of teaspoons of used coffee grounds into this pan. I heated the water to make it nice and hot, and then basically I've let the rye seed soak overnight to make it nice and moist and to make it saturate. So once you've let your rye seed and used coffee ground mixture soak for sort of 12-24 hours, what you want to do is bring it up to a very gentle kind of rolling boil. Make sure it's all mixed together, obviously. Bring it up to a gentle rolling boil for about 10 minutes. And whilst that's doing that, there's only a couple of minutes left, you prepare your jars. These are just jars that had tomato puree in. I've sterilised them using Milton fluid. I've wiped them all down, made sure they're absolutely dry, because too much moisture is as much of a problem as not enough, apparently. So make sure they're dry. I've sanitised my hands with alcohol. I've sanitised the lids. I've punched a small hole in the lids, as you can see. There you go. I'm using my Victorinox Farmer. I sterilised the blade with the alcohol cleaner, and then I just held the blade in the flame, in a naked flame, for a few seconds just to kill off any lasting bacteria. And I've just stuffed some kitchen towel in there for now, because you don't need the hole open at the moment. So there are my jars, completely sterilised. Everything has to be sterilised. My hands have been sterilised. You just want to sterilise everything constantly to cut down on the chances of mould. So my jars are ready. I've got about a minute left of this 10-minute rolling boil, and I'll show you the next step. So my mixture has just finished its 10-minute rolling boil. So what I'm going to do now, take it over to the sink, and I'm going to pour it into a sieve and get all that mixture in there. And basically what you want to do is you want to use the steam that's coming from the mixture to dry the grain. But you don't want it to dry so the grain completely dries out. You want to dry off all of the surface moisture. So what you do is, you have to be careful because obviously it's very, very hot. What you want to do, actually I'm getting a spoon because that is hot. You want to spread the grain out around the sides of the sieve, push it up the sides. You want to expose as much of the grain as you can. What that'll do is that'll help it to dry. Obviously the steam coming from the mixture will dry out the grain, and you want to leave it to dry out and for it to just cool down for about 20 minutes to half an hour. And once you've done that, what you want is, you want the grain, when you actually touch it, to feel touch dry. You don't want the grain to actually leave any moisture on your hands. Obviously the insides of the grain are going to be soft and hydrated, and one way that you can test that is if you put a piece of kitchen paper or toilet paper onto your work surface, and then just put maybe a teaspoon of grain onto it and see if the grain leaves any moisture on the paper. If it leaves any moisture on the paper, you just need to let the grain dry out a little bit more. So that's what you need. You need, as you can see, spread it around the edges of the sieve to expose as much of the grain as possible so it can dry. And then you want to leave it 20-30 minutes so that it's touch dry, and then we'll be on to the next step, which will be the beginning to add grain to the jars. My grain mixture has dried, and I've just added it now to my jars. The idea is to add enough grain that is sort of 3/4 of the jar, but it doesn't have to be an exact measurement. I mean, there's a little bit less in this jar. Again, my hands are sanitised. The idea is you don't want to fill it right to the top, because you want to be able to shake the grain in the jars to mix the mushroom and the mycelium about a little bit. So what you undo is on-go the lids, and then what you want to do next is you want to prepare your jars for the water bath, the pasteurisation process. What you want to do is you want to put some tin foil completely over the top of your jar, or jars rather, because when you put your jars into your water bath and you boil it for an hour, boil the water for an hour, you don't want any water droplets dropping from the lid of your bath onto the jar and actually working its way into the grain, because it's going to make it extra wet. Now, I say water bath, it's nothing complicated. As you can see, it's basically a great big saucepan. You want to put something in the bottom of the pan so that the jars aren't actually going to be directly on the bottom of the pan, exposed to the heat. Just want to create a little gap. So what I've got here is some metal curtain rings. They just create a tiny, I mean, they're incredibly thin, as you can see, but they will create just a tiny gap between the bottom of the bath and the bottom of the jar. So you want to put the jars on, make sure they're very well secure. Hang on a second. I can't get them very secure. There you go. And the next one goes on, and there you go. So your jars are now both in the water bath. Make sure they're secure and can't fall over. And what you want to do next is you want to fill your pan with hot water, but you want to fill the water level just to the top of where the grain is, and then you want to bring that to the boil. Well, you want to bring it up to about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, which you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's about 80 to 85 degrees centigrade. But, you know, 180 degrees Fahrenheit it will be. I've got one of these very cheap pot thermometers with a clip on the side, so you just, you know, put it in the water and clip it onto the side, and you're done. So put hot water in, bring it to the boil, 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you want to try and maintain that temperature as best you can, and you want to put them in there for about an hour to about an hour and a half. I'm going to put the lid on. Again, now you see why the tin foil is there. You don't want the water droplets and that will basically pasteurise the grain and kill off any contaminants or mould, spores or anything that might be in there. And once you've done that, you'll then be on to the process of collecting the mycelium from mushrooms and inoculating the jars, and I'll show you that step after I've used my water bath. And there's my water bath. 2 jars with a tin foil on the top, the pan lid on, just bubbling away nicely. You probably can't see what the temperature is because it's a bit steamed up, but it's about 177. You want to get it to 180, but obviously it doesn't have to be exact, so 175, 177 is fine. I've got the heat on quite low, so I've now, turned up the heat and turned it down until I've got it to a point where the temperature is basically stable. So you want to now leave that for about an hour or 90 minutes and come back and see the next stage. Okay, so my water bath is finished. I've allowed my jars to cool down inside the bath for a couple of hours, and here they are. So let's get on with adding some mushroom. So the first thing you want to do is you just want to crack the jar lid so it's just slightly undone. Okay, but you don't want to take the lid off just yet because you want to keep everything. Let me just adjust the camera slightly. You just want to keep everything as sterile as possible. Okay, so let me just move those out of the way. I apologise if the camera angle's a bit funny, but this is a bit tricky for me. So I have my knife, which I've sterilised in alcohol, and I'm just going to do it with the flame for a few seconds, just to kill off any possible bacteria at the left. And what you need to do is you take an oyster mushroom, usually the stem of the oyster mushroom, and you want to slit it down the middle. And there's another piece here that I've slit down the middle, and what you'll find is that you get this kind of stringy, kind of white stringy stuff in the middle. And sorry, if you hold that, you can just literally pull it out of the mushroom, and that stringy white fluffy stuff is actually the mycelium. That's a perfect bit. You see how that's just pulling out? There you go. That's the mycelium inside the mushroom. Now, the reason that you want to cut your mushroom open and take it from the inside as much as possible is because the inside of the mushroom is actually sterile. And obviously my hands are sterile as well. So again, you just go in there and you just pull it out, and it just sort of, just peels out of the mushroom, and you're left with this bit of white stuff here. This is the inside of the mushroom that you need. Here's a much bigger piece of stem. I don't know what I'm going to get. Here you go. You just pull it, out it comes. This is the sterile stuff. This is what you want for your jars. Again, we'll just do another piece. So just there you go. You just pull it. There's a little bit more. Also, if you don't do it that way, you can actually just take, I'm not sure if I've got, yeah, you can actually just take kind of the bottom of the mushroom and just slice it off, and just leave yourself with this tiny little bit of mushroom, and you can put that in your jar as well. So then what you want to do is you want to take your piece of mushroom here, and let's just make it a little bit smaller. Let's cut this up into smaller pieces. Obviously, make sure your hands are clean. You can wear gloves, but I've washed my hands. I've thoroughly wiped them with alcohol, and they're completely clean. So you want to get a few small pieces of mushroom, and then what you need to do is you take your jar and you want to use your tweezers just to very quickly take the lid off and drop a piece in. Put the lid back on, take another piece with your tweezers, very quickly. You want to do all of that quickly. You want to screw the lid up. You can take the tin foil off now because the jar is still sealed, and you want to just give your jar a really good shake so that the two pieces of mushroom that you put in are mixed up within the grain. I'm not sure if you can see it anywhere. If you can see the mushroom on the side, that's an advantage. There's some there. Don't know if you can just pick that up. Yep, just see that. So that's the first two pieces, and then you just want to do it again. I'm going to add 4 pieces of mushroom, so you get your mushroom in your tweezers. Now I can't undo the lid. Take the lid off, mushroom in, lid on, get another piece of mushroom, drop it in, make sure the lid's tight, give it a good shake, make sure the mushroom is all mixed up in the grain. You want to try and, as I said, get some mushroom around the side so you can see the progress. And that's your jar done. Some mushroom in there, you can see. And that's your jar done. You want to put a label on the front with the date that you first put the mushroom in, because obviously you want to know how long it's taking. And you just repeat the process for your other jars. Now once you've done that, what you want to be doing is you want to store them in a dark place. The temperature doesn't matter too much. You want to store them in a place where the temperature is fairly even, it's not up and down all the time. If it's a warmer place, the mycelium will spread from the mushroom more quickly. If it's colder, it'll take a longer time. I'll just very quickly show you where I store my jars. Okay, so I basically just have a shoebox. It's a fully closable shoebox. And this is where I keep my jars. As you can see, the one on the right is the mushroom onto cardboard strips, and the mycelium is spreading throughout that cardboard already. I did this about 7 days ago. This is the first mushroom jar that I've done with grain that I showed you at the beginning of the video. Just see, I don't know if you can pick it up too well. No, it's beginning to it's getting really furry because the mycelium's really spreading now. So that's all you need. This is the jar that you've just seen me put mushroom into. There's some oyster mushroom there. There's some on the top. And you just want to put it in a dark place. Like I said, if it's warmer, the mycelium will spread more quickly. If it's colder, it'll take longer. And about after 10 days, you should have a jar that will be much more white. You'll have a lot of mycelium in there. The one thing that you really need to watch out for is green mould. If you get any green mould or any mould inside the jar that doesn't look like the mycelium from the mushroom, then unfortunately it means your jar and your grain has become contaminated, which means unfortunately you're going to have to throw it away and start the process again. This is why, you know, you want to have several, maybe half a dozen of these jars with grain all going at the same time, because you are bound to have some contamination. So that's the step to create the mycelium from the mushroom on grain. I'm going to put these in the box, and I'll make another video when I need to take the next step, which will be once the jar is full of mycelium, and then I can add it to a grow box, some substrate, and hopefully we can get some mushrooms. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more. It is a fairly long-winded process at first, but once you've done it once or twice, you know, it is quite a simple process, and it's very well worth it, I think, when you get mushrooms. If you are an experienced mushroom grower and you've seen me make any mistakes, or you have any advice on tips, then please let me know, because, you know, this is the very first time I'm doing all of this, so I may be doing things wrong. And I guess I'll see you again, and I look forward to reading and replying to any of your comments. So stay tuned, and in 10 days or so I'll make another video. Hopefully my jars will be full of mycelium. Okay, thank you very much.